All right, welcome to the long-awaited tank tier list for season 2. Like I said, I wanted to wait for Amatra to come out, but then they announced that they were going to do a sudden patch on the 15th. So I was like, all right, let's wait for that patch. And it actually did a lot of changes to the list. So I'm happy I actually waited for those changes. And like I always like to do, I want to preface this tier list by saying this is not for pro play. I make these tier lists for solo queue because the environment in solo queue is completely different than that of a professional team environment. Because I'm going to have people in the comment section saying, Winston is 100% pick rate in Owl. How dare he not be an S tier tank god? He carried Owl, blah, 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 in the comment section. Solo queue environment is a completely different environment than a professional team. So get off me. But with that being said, let's hop into the list. So first we got my boy Doom, and he's actually the main perpetrator as to why I'm happy I waited for the December 15th hero balance changes. Because if this was 4 days ago, he would be here. Like, they overtuned the hell out of him with the season 2 patch, and thank God they were able to hot fix him and do a bunch of other buffs and changes with this new hero balance. With those changes, I think he moves down to top of A. I still think he's a very powerful hero, but making his rocket punch 4 seconds instead of 3, and making the minimum damage requirement for rocket punch to be empowered from 80 to 100, and then also the temporary health gain per target hit with the ability decreased from 40 to 35. He's gone from like literally being able to almost infinitely combo you like you're playing fucking Street Fighter to requiring a little bit more skill and finesse, and just not being able to just go crazy across the board. And I think it was a really well-deserved balance. I think he's kind of in a good spot now where he's not just dominating the meta of the game along with like Roadhog. On a little side note, I kind of want to give Blizzard a little good noodle star, because they're actually being very transparent and putting a lot of effort into balancing the game, to making the game more fun across the board of all ranks and everything. Good shit, Blizzard. Keep it up. Keep doing well. I'm super happy. With that being said, let's hop into the next hero. And number 2 on the list is D.Va. And this one kind of makes me sad because she's like my favorite tank in the game, but I think she's a B. After the nerf that they did to her defense matrix, and I'm pretty sure they did something to her overall just like damage at range, she's just like a lackluster tank. She's still usable and still playable, obviously. She's just a character that doesn't particularly fit well in the current meta of the game, right? With Doom and Roadhog probably being the most 2 dominant tanks that are currently in the meta. Maybe Doom falls out a little bit because of his nerfs. He just doesn't do very well against those type of characters, right? And that's why you're going to notice in this list a little rise to prominence of some other tanks, especially with the buff. Obviously, I still think D.Va's a great tank. You have defense matrix, you have her rockets, you have a way to just dive Pharahs in the sky. She's still one of the only tanks that can deal with flying characters really well because she can just chase them down in the sky. And she has a built-in Guardian's Angel, which is pretty busted at any point in the game. If you know how to properly use her mech form, and you know when you need to pop in and out of it, and you know if you have your ultimate, you can literally use it as like a Guardian's Angel. If you've ever played League of Legends, that's why I call it GA basically. You battle until the mech pops out, pop your ult, you get some shots in while your ult's popping off, and then you get back into mech and continue fighting. She basically has like 2 lives at some points in time in the game, so you can be a very sticky tank, very annoying, high mobility. It's just that I don't think that she fits in the meta really well, and with the nerfs that happened to her back in November, I just think that she's just like a step behind the rest of the meta, which honestly makes me sad because she's like my favorite tank in the game, like by far. Been since Overwatch 1, one of my favorite characters, period, right? But even I can objectively look at it and know that she's not in the best spot in the current meta. You know, even though if you're at a B, A, or S, like I'm still happy if I see them in my game, and I'll still play like anything from S to B. I try to stay away from like anything that I'm going to put C, D, or F, because I just feel like kind of throwing the game. There's a lot of times where like I'm like, a D.Va would be really useful right now, right? If they have flyers, if they have like, if they're running like Pharah Echo Mercy type of shit, like 3 flyers going crazy. Ramatra's little fucking E void circle thing's not doing nothing to the flyers. So having a D.Va that can run them down in the sky is pretty good. All right, so in the 3rd spot we have Junker Queen, and I think this is pretty self-explanatory. She's just terrible, right? Like, she was obviously broken in the beta, and they nerfed her to shit, and she was basically unplayable, or still is unplayable in all of like Overwatch 2's like official release. They tried to buff her a little bit in the November 15th patch, but with that came actually some pseudo nerfs where they buffed some of her abilities, but they also made her hitbox larger, so she's still dying just as fast because people are hitting her more. So it's a little strange, right? And I think all in all, they need to just kind of do like a a Doomfist to her. What they did to Doomfist, they kind of need to do to her, because unlike what happened to Doomfist, where as the season was developing, he was kind of finding a decent niche spot where he was playable. She is not finding that sort of niche spot. She actually needs some help. Her knife isn't doing enough. She doesn't have enough sustain to keep herself alive and her team alive. Don't get me wrong, the shout is good with the movement speed buff and the health buff. You're not really hitting the melee as much as you want to be hitting it. The dagger isn't doing enough and keeping her alive long enough. She's not self-healing enough. She just needs some help, I'm not gonna lie. The shotgun might need a damage buff too. Just in general, she needs a lot of work. I think her ultimate's in a good state. They need to tweak her numbers that they want her to be playable, because currently it's just not it. She's just being overpowered by the current meta of like Roadhog, Doomfist. I think Ramatra, after the buffs, when I get to him, he's at the end of the list. When I get to him, he's going to be in a good state too. Like, he just needs, I think she needs some tweaks to numbers, right? I think that's the biggest thing for her, because she does have a lot of usability and utility that could be helpful in a team fight, but her current state's just not the one. And people are going to be like, I'm a Junker Queen main, blah, 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 blah. I'm goated. But like, let's be real, guys. You're throwing if you're picking her. All right, so now fourth on the list, we have Orisa. And this one's a sleeper, guys. So with the rise of Doomfist and in the hotfix that they just released a couple of days ago, Orisa got a pretty big buff where they made it so her Terra Surge now pierces through barriers upon impact, and they made her damage fall off range 10 meters more. Not only does she counter the current meta of Road Doomfist, she is stronger just as a whole against shield and barriers, right? Honestly, I think she's a very powerful character that I think once we evaluate it more, she might even be higher on the list with these Doomfist nerfs. She's like kind of the current like meta killer with the nerfs on top of it, where she's just a more powerful tank to begin with. You know, she obviously has Fortify, which is making her the tankiest tank in the game. Her spear stuns and stops abilities. She literally turns off ultimates if you know what you're doing. Like if Sigma tries to ult, if Moira ults, she just says straight up no and rejects them. The spin can deflect all projectiles and stop her from dying, and her ultimate now is even more powerful because he can go through barriers on impact. It's so good. She's so good, and probably the most self-sustaining, self-efficient tank in the game, where she can stay alive for such a long time on her own kit that she applies a lot of relief to the supports that are like, oh shit, I need to keep this tank alive. Orisa is one of the only tanks that can just be like, nah, I got it. I can keep myself alive for a fucking 2-minute fight just chilling with my skills, right? And if you combo them properly, you can kind of go from one skill to another. You know, oh, I'm about to be attacked by a Road, put him, like stun him, block, then fortify, then the block will be back up by the time the fortify's down, and you can work off your cooldowns and be like almost like unkillable for a very, very long time. She's honestly the tank that I've been playing the most because of the Roadhog Doomfist meta that I don't want to play. Obviously, I'm picking her to counter that, and I think she's in a really, really good spot, especially with the buffs. All right, coming in at number 5 is my boy Ryan, the classic, the tried, the tested, the C tier.
Daddy, chill.
Because don't get me wrong, Flats, everyone talks about it, I talk about it. Ryan needs some help, but because he has such a high win rate in all the lower ranks, bronze to probably like diamond, he has such a high win rate because he is probably the lowest skill character, or one of the lowest skill characters in a rank where people aren't that good at aiming or don't have the mechanical skill to defeat him. He can dominate, he can reign supreme, but in a higher elo, he just doesn't meet the requirements you need to be successful, right? Yes, you can have your shield up, but that shit gets torched way too fast. Flame Strike, because of the nerf, can't kill with specific boosts like Baptiste Wall, or when he's nanoed. You know, still has a very impactful ult. Shatter is very good, but why does it take 2 flame strikes? Not even 2 flame strikes can't even kill a stationary target, right? If you're flame striking at an opponent and he's 250 HP, why shouldn't both your flame strikes on impact kill? You know, they only do 90. Like, that's crazy, right? I don't know what they would need to do to make Ryan powerful, and he's still useful on some maps, right? I still think he's really good on like maps like King's Row, because it's a very small confined map, has a lot of turns, bends, and it's pretty close quarters, so he can constantly kind of be in the action. But if you go to any sort of like open map, and most of the maps in the game, he's just not able to be as effective as you want him to be, because he has no like mid game, right? He's either in there or he's kind of like just pseudo useless, if you know what I mean, right? I don't want to say completely useless, because he can still have the shield up, relieve pressure and damage from your team, mitigation, right? But he's just not doing as much because other characters can mitigate damage while still putting pressure on the enemy teams. Ramatra, Sigma, you know, perfect examples of that, right? And don't get me wrong, I don't think he's the worst character in the game, obviously. I just think he needs some help. You know, in the right hands, in a specialist hand, the character can still be insane, but that's why there's only like 3 people in the top 500 that are crazy enough to play this freaking character, right? Like he's not the one. He needs some help. All right, and next we got my boy Hog. And I'm not gonna lie, that boy's got the hog in him. The GOAT! He's been dominating the meta since they nerfed Zarya. He has slowly become the highest pick rate, the highest win rate tank across pretty much every rank in the game. You land that hook, if that person's under 250, he's getting comboed, and that is just crazy, right? The power to just take an opponent and you race him off the map with hook, shoot, melee is insane. He also has a massive heal that's like, oh, let me get 300 health, have 50% resist, and also gain 20% of my ultimate that I can now use to kill you faster or push you off objective. It's just super powerful and extremely impressive, which is why the Overwatch devs have already said they're going to change him come January. I think they said like middle of January or late January. They're going to have another like mid-season patch where they're going to like pseudo rework Roadhog. I don't know if they're going to change any of his skills, but they definitely said they're going to make the combo less impactful, which means they probably might do what they do to Sigma, where his combo where you rock double nade ground melee doesn't kill people like Reaper, who has 250, right? But that's for a future video, because right now, if you want to rank up, pick fucking Roadhog. That character is insane. He dominates the meta across the ladder, because if you land a hook on a squishy, that character dies and it changes the tide of the fight. It goes from a 5v5 to a 4v5 instantly, and the impact of just being able to delete someone off the map is so powerful that he's just dominant, right? Next we got Sigma. I think like Orisa is on the up because he currently kind of counters the meta because his wall is retractable. He's got the stone that can, you know, disrupt people from their skills. Like if Doom's trying to combo, you know, he can knock him down. His retractable shield is really powerful to protect people from Road, and he can also stun Road as well. He has a lot of self-sustain with his suck, his damage absorption skill. His ultimate is probably one of the best ultimates of any tank in the game. It could literally just shut down a team fight very easily and makes him extremely mobile. And he also has a lot of high damage output that is easy to hit with, right? Obviously, because it impacts and it can bounce and it can explode at the max range of it as well. So you're usually always going to get hits with Sigma. He's probably one of the best defensive tanks in the game. You know, the pseudo poke tank, kind of like Ramatra's range form. Like it's like based off of like what Sigma is in that play style. And like I mentioned in my Ramatra video, I just think that Sigma does it so well and so much better in general. Like that range gameplay, the poke ability, the ability to retract, put the shield wherever you want it to be. You know, it gives you a ton of option, and Sigma is a tank that has a ton of options, right? He can also still play a close range fight because his autos are explosives. His rock allows him to get close range and get gritty, hit targets, stun them, pseudo like combo, right? Like if his squishy's coming up, you know, if they're below 225, he'll kill them, right? Like he'll rock ground melee, they're just dead, right? So he still has the kill pressure of Roadhog. It's just a little bit worse. All right, so now we got my boy Winton, young Winstone, and this is where people are gonna go crazy in the comment section. Well, maybe this and another one, but they're gonna go insane here. I think he's B. What? I think he's better, obviously better than D.Va. For the current meta that the game is shaping out to have, the Roadhog Doom, I think Ramatra, we're gonna talk about it when we get to Ramatra, he just doesn't fit very well. He's still a great tank, and he still works very well in a dive composition. If you have a dive team comp and you are very calculated with your team, you can really hit the back line and destroy them with a Winston. But any sort of mid-game nooch kind of fight, he doesn't really operate well in because his bubble shield isn't that great. His range attack isn't the best, even though it is good that he has a range attack now. He just, like D.Va, suffers from the meta that currently exists, and I don't think they could theoretically do any buffs to him where it's good. I just think he's just a tank that's like right outside of the meta, which is why I have him at the B tier. He's still a playable character. He's still fantastic. If I see him in my ranked games, I'm still chilling. He just kind of gets knocked out by what the meta is currently. And maybe, like I said, when they nerf Roadhog and they changed the way the current meta is. Maybe with these nerfs from Doomfist, he might actually be worse than what I perceived to be. Winston might move up a little bit, you know, if Doom and Road go lower, because I think he's in a good place. I just think he's currently being overshadowed, right? All right, so now that everyone's done in the comment section complaining, blah, 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 this character should be higher, let's get on to the next person on the list, and that is Hamtaro, Ball, Hamster, whatever you want to call him. And it's pretty self-explanatory. The boy's F. He's the worst tank, but I kind of want to say the worst hero in the game currently, right? In the role that he is in, if people are going to complain, oh, there's a top 500 player, you know, people have gotten top 500 with him, blah, blah, one tricking. People have gotten to top 500, one tricking every character in the game. So that statement is irrelevant to me. I am looking at this as what the character offers for the current meta and the game itself. And he does not do what a tank is meant to do in my eyes. A tank is either meant to defend the team or apply enough pressure where they take the eyes off of the supports and damage dealers. Like Roadhog is a perfect example. He does not apply a lot of defensive prowess for the team like a Reinhardt can, right, with shield, or Orisa can by just putting her body in front of him, fortifying, spinning the spear, stuff like that. Sigma with shield. But Roadhog applies a lot of kill pressure, right? Similar to like a Doomfist. He actually makes you turn around and look at him, because if you don't kill him, he will kill you. Ball doesn't defend the team and doesn't apply kill pressure in any way, shape, or form. All he does is roll around, not really diverting the eyes of your team. Your team will just literally still just get murdered and mowed down. You know, he has a way to buff himself cool, but like, and he has a way to like AoE stun people and knock them up. But that skill isn't up enough and doesn't do enough to warrant the use of him, right? And his ultimate is fucking useless. Yeah, you put a bunch of mines on the ground that can literally be shot, and if the player is even remotely smart enough, will not be killed by them in any way, shape, or form. In Overwatch 1, where there was 2 tanks, maybe the ball was useful because you have your main tank that's defending the team, and then you have an off tank that's providing a lot of disruption. When there's only 1 tank in the game, you need to do a lot, and he does not do enough. Next, we got Zarya, and this might be another contentious pick or placement because a lot of people love Zarya and think she's OP and think she's broken and crazy good. But after they nerfed her in the November 15 patch, she's slowly been falling out of favor. And with the new current meta that the game is in, I don't think she fits into it. I don't even think she's great. I think she's good.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Obviously better than Reinhardt, but nowhere near as good as the top tier picks or even the right off meta picks like Winston or Diva. Obviously, if someone's picking a Diva and you have the option to swap to a Zarya, you will, because obviously she just directly counters Diva. But other than that, the nerfs that happened to her just really made her almost unusable in the current meta of the game. The duration reduction of her barrier and the extra cooldown to it makes it so there's a much larger margin for her to just get blown out of the water. And in a game where you have Roadhog being the meta that applies a ton of pressure, and you know, Bastion having buffs and being very impactful, as soon as you pop your barrier and then either defend a teammate or potentially double barrier yourself, there's a massive like 7-second window where you can just get insta comboed out of the ground, right? And don't get me wrong, her ultimate is still very impactful, grab is still great, but it doesn't matter if you don't even get to use the grab because you're getting completely just rolled off the map, right? And again, Zarya might also be dealing with a meta issue, right, where Roadhog is just so powerful right now because the one combo, and he's just been something we've been dealing with for a very long time, right? Roadhog has always been a super annoying character, and other characters have just been more powerful that it's kept him out of just being the god. But because everyone's been getting nerfed and buffed and changed around, and what was like super powerful is no longer as powerful, he just kind of just got to rise to prominence. And I don't know if a buff to Zarya is completely what's necessary, or maybe just a shift in the meta would make her more viable. You know, a lot of this game is going to change when Roadhog does not have the ability to just combo somebody out. And last but definitely not least, we have my boy Rimatra. And this might be a little bit of a debated thing, but recently he was just buffed in the patch that came out a couple of days ago. And I think honestly, now with these changes, he might actually be meta. I think he's going to be S tier. He was already starting to get play in contenders where like you just kind of use him as like a completely defensive option, where you wall up, you spray it around a corner while his wall is up, you switch to Nemesis form, and then you block, right? But with these increases to his movement speed while in Nemesis form, a 20% movement speed increase, and the armor bonus increase from 150 to 225, and the cooldown reduce of his barrier from 15 to 13, he almost has a state where he can like loop and he's almost a tempo. I don't want to say this, but it kind of feels almost like he can be what they wanted him to be, a tempo tank. You can put the wall up, it's up for 4 seconds. You can use that to break the distance of the space. Then you can go into Nemesis. Having that extra armor and the extra movement speed will make it so they can't run away from you. Actually get your damage in and be a melee combatant. And then by the time the Nemesis form dissipates, you have your shield almost back up, and then you can throw the shield up again and then kind of begin the backpedal state, and you play in this like mid-range, like I'm going melee, combating you, and actually being able to do stuff with Nemesis form and apply pressure, and then back to your kind of poke state, and it can really shift the state and the balance of the game. Do I still think he might need one more buff? Yes, I think his ultimate doesn't need more damage, but that 3-second buffer time either needs to refresh or it needs to just be increased to a total of 5 seconds, because I feel like his ultimate doesn't really get to be as impactful as I kind of want it to be, but maybe it might just be too broken if you do something like that where like it's just never going to be off and he just gets to run it the entire fight. But I almost feel like that's what it was made for, right? I might be crazy, I might be stupid to suggest something like that, but I kind of feel like you wanted the ultimate to kind of be like a final boss, but I don't think you want to break the game in that way, right? But all in all, since they buffed him, I've been playing him a ton in quick play, and again, this is also quick play only because I can't play him in rank. I've just been rolling every single fucking game I'm in. I'm top damage, running people down into their spawn every single game without fail. But yeah, guys, so that's I'm kind of like looking over at the list again to see if I kind of want to change anything, but I think this is the list. I'm happy with it. And obviously Doomfist still needs to kind of be evaluated a little bit, because the nerf, I don't think he's S tier anymore. They brought him down. I think the buff was enough to make Ramattra, at least in my eyes, an S tier meta character so far from what I've been able to experience. But I'm happy with the list and where everyone ended up in. Yeah, honestly, doo-doo characters, don't play on my game. In a decent spot, but I would prefer not, you know, maybe like certain specific situations, King's Row. If they pull out a diva, pick a Zarya type of stuff. Can be played, but aren't as good as like the top meta. But before this video becomes 75 minutes of me rambling about tanks, if you guys liked the video, don't forget to leave a like, rating, and a comment. And I'll see you boys in the next video. Peace.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me.